we are doing part 3 of our service lesson in our series about Christian neighboring and hospitality. So we have discussed a number of things about service so far, and each lesson has been short in content and full of discussion, which has been wonderful. And so we've talked about why we serve, what we're accomplishing when we serve. Last week we talked about how do we serve, and that we're each uniquely made with our own personalities and skill sets, and that's on purpose. And you're held to the standard that God gives you as an individual, and not to your sister next to you. So this week I want to talk about how we identify service opportunities. And whenever we talk about this, I mean this through the lens of primarily through like your neighbor next door, but it's also just as applicable to your family in this building too. So how do we identify service opportunities? Opportunities should be things that build relationship. That's what you're looking for with your neighbor. We'll walk right past a need if we don't see it. We need to build empathy. We had a whole lesson about that. Building empathy and awareness for the needs of others around you. One thing you can do that I've been trying to do myself is praying and asking God to give you eyes that see and ears that hear the needs of his image bearers around you. Because those needs exist already, and you can step right in on the train with people and start helping them. Like they're already happening, whether or not you see them. Right now, as we're sitting in this room, those needs exist with your neighbors next door. I'm thinking through the lens of your physical neighbors again. Ask God to reveal them to you. Henry Nouwen said, he's amazing. Pay attention to the people God puts in your path if you want to discern what God is up to in your life. I think this includes your neighbors and their needs. You're their neighbor on purpose. It's not an accident. What does Rosaria Butterfield say in her book? She says, God doesn't get the address wrong. You're meant to be that person's neighbor. So as we seek to grow in empathy and awareness, we will grow in service. We grow in our awareness of service opportunities. How do we stumble across them? What are we looking for? Well, you can learn a lot of things just by observing, right? Do you ever get this feeling of, I should go do this thing? Like that feeling, it's not even a thought process. It's like just a feeling that your body has when you're like, oh, I should do this. Like sometimes, I don't know, when you're walking through a parking lot and you see someone unloading groceries that clearly could benefit from assistance. Is that on your radar where you see like, oh, I could go do this. I could help them. And do you just like keep walking? Where does that feeling come from? I think that's given to us by God, right? I think that's a conviction.
I have to say something.
Yes, ma'am.
So Robert had that, or somebody had that in a sermon in the last 6 months or whatever, about helping somebody with groceries.
Oh, okay.
And I can't remember who it was. I was talking to after church. Said, "Yeah, I did that the other day, and the woman had stolen the groceries."
That's funny. Yeah.
It's a long story, but it's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah.
Yes, and you were witnessing to her. Tell you what.
Running out, and she was helping the woman start her cart through the snow and all that because it was really late.
Yeah.
And then she's like,
He's like, why are we running? Yeah.
"This lady, I really know this."
Yeah.
But it was somebody.
That's funny. But I'll tell you what, that lady's in the middle of a crime, and she says, boy, that light was shining. Someone was helping me load up. You know, she's not going to forget that. That's funny. That's funny. And think of the cops. Think of the cops involved in that. They saw that Christian doing something. You know, that's hilarious. So maybe you'll be an accomplice, but 9 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10 you're witnessing. 9 times out of 10 it's not to a crime. I love that. That's the best.
No, Amber.
Yes, ma'am.
My husband, he ignored that instinct one time.
Uh-huh.
He was driving to church when we were in Texas for training. He saw a hitchhiker. He's like, I really feel like just pick him up. He's like, but I'm late for this Bible study at the church building. I just need to go. So he just ignores it, and he keeps on going. And then about 30 minutes later, this man walks into the church building.
Oh.
And he's like, I'm so sorry, I'm late. No one would pick me up.
Oh no, that's the worst feeling.
And it's like,
Ben's just dying on the inside. Yeah.
oh, I think that was my job.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. Oh, I hope he uses that in many a sermon or something, whatever Ben does. Well, another one, these might seem kind of trivial, but this is how you connect with your neighbors. Do you ever see a neighbor's trash can tipped over? Like their big old flump, like just on the side? Is it ready to be pulled back into the house? So in my life, Amber, I have begun to notice childcare needs based on phone calls I overhear because I live in an apartment, and we hear everything. And poor Dej, I feel so bad. David Desjardins, when you see him, just put your hand on your heart because he lives right below Patsy's room. So we gave him earplugs though, and so anyways, like. You're aware of, in apartment living, you're acutely aware of those needs. Our neighbor was apparently watching like an MMA or something last night, I kid you not, at 12:30 in the morning. And he was like screaming with a lot of language that we don't use in our home, but he uses in his. And he was really excited about whatever was happening. He was yelling, and then he said, "Sorry, you guys." And I loved it. I loved it so much. But you overhear these needs, and I have overheard these needs that he is expressing about childcare. Like, for example, he's a single dad. His kid gets sick, he's off of work. That's a big deal when you're an hourly paid employee. And so it would be easy for me to be like, man, he's on the phone, that's really loud. And sometimes I feel that way. But then I'm like, okay, God's letting me overhear this conversation because I'm definitely not trying to hear it. So God's giving me this conversation. How can I use this information? I've begun to see clothing needs in the people around me. I have also seen transportation needs very recently, and I have inferred some food needs. So I've perceived these needs. I'm not even saying I've acted on them yet. I've perceived a lot of these needs. These are things that no one would know if you didn't do, but they give you an ought to feeling. I believe that this is God pricking your heart and stirring you to service, because I get this ought to feeling in my stomach. Normally it's in my stomach. It's where the ought to organ lives. And I then have like 15 reasons why I'm like, well, I can't do that because we're saving money on my groceries and this is what I have for us right now. Or I know, but that's Rosemary's nap time, so I really can't pick his son up from school. And I know this child could use these clothes, but really I'm being a better steward to my children if I save them for when Rosemary's in this size. And I have a lot of reasons, and they're good reasons because they're serving my family. But this good reason is getting in the way of, I'm idolizing my family's comfort and preparedness over a hungry, helpless, or just in need of some help person across the hall from me, literally. And that feeling's in my stomach, right? And I try and cover it up with, I'm serving my family, or I don't have time, and I don't want to be late, and I don't want to be late to church, you know what I mean? And Jeffrey said this once at some point. Now I grumble it to myself when I'm angry a little bit. I'm like, it's not a sacrifice if you don't give something up. And we're called to sacrificial living. And I say that rolling my eyes all the time because I have to get over myself, right? Yeah. And I say, it's not a sacrifice if you're not giving something up. Smile on my face and serve. And then I'm rewarded because that ought to feeling just like blooms, like, and then I look back and feel terrible that I even wondered about serving. So whenever you walk around and have an ought to feeling, I would really sit with that and lean into it. Yes, ma'am.
Out of all the time sometimes that you spend with Facebook and you think about the negative things, there's a new group that's out there in the last 6 months. I'd have to look it up, but it's called Buy Nothing. Basically, it's I think there's a few of you that is on it, but I've messaged some people you can ask or you can offer. But there's people, and nobody's asked for elaborate stuff. No. It's just things they need, like mom needs a diaper for babies. And when I first joined that group, I was like, we'll see what, but I kind of thought of it as a service group. Yeah. So if you don't have, a place that you're looking for something, join that group and go look every day. Yeah. See if there's somebody out there in the community that you can help.
Get the Nextdoor app.
Maybe
it's a neighboring app.
Something like that, because almost everything is just people asking for simple things, food, diapers, or maybe, they need more blankets, or they need just simple stuff. And
those are personal connections you make when you serve people.
Absolutely.
That's I am beginning to be involved with Safe Families. Your ministry lead is right here. And a big thing I'm learning about Safe Families, if you want to know more about it, you should ask her, but because I don't have enough time. But something I'm learning about Safe Families is any way that you serve in your community is really a connection point to your congregation. Yeah. And no box of diapers delivered is time wasted. No, can I give your kid a ride? It's time wasted. Like, it connects everything back. Yeah. Exactly. And so I think it's wonderful. Yes, ma'am.
I've been studying since I was here last Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
You were just talking about grumbling.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do that a lot.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
1 Peter 4:9. Be hospitable to one another without complaining.
Mm-hmm.
And then 1 Corinthians, it says, and I looked up complaining and grumbling. And 1 Corinthians 10 and 6 and 7, it talks about Moses
Mm-hmm.
coming out. And one of the things that those guys got killed for was grumbling.
Mm.
And I was like, man, did it really tick God off that bad to kill him? And then I looked up grumbling. And grumbling was complain about something in a bad-tempered way.
Mm-hmm.
So, with a attitude.
Mm-hmm.
So, complaint. A statement that is a situation that is unsatisfactory or unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking, wow, God, and then you keep going down, and then it's that no temptation
Yeah.
has overtaken you,
Mm-hmm.
and you really want to complain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my purse dumped today as I was coming to church, and I caught myself complaining.
Yeah.
And I was like, shut up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we've gotten so lackadaisical in being comfortable.
Mhm.
I think it's so easy to complain or grumble.
Oh yeah.
And then I went to another scripture and found out that in Philippians, it's Philippians 2:12 and 18, that by serving, and if you keep on doing the complaining and stuff, does that do everything without complaining and grumbling?
Mhm.
And you keep on reading down there, if you keep on doing it, what you're doing is in vain.
Mm.
I was like, oh no.
Mhm.
I don't want that to be in vain. But I was studying that this
Yeah.
morning.
Grumbling's and I joke about it. It is something I really struggle with, and I'm thankful that I'm sanctified daily, in each moment. You know, convicted by the Holy Spirit, by my husband, by my friends around me, that kind of give me attitude checks. You know, and it's definitely something I'm growing in personally. I don't wake up delighted to ruin my child's nap time, miss an appointment, not have a ready-made meal for the night. You know, I'm not like, ooh, I can't wait to be unprepared for my personal life. Like, it's an attitude of constantly looking at, this is a sacrifice for something way more important than myself. And it is a lot easier for me to plan for big sacrifices using all my PTO to go on a Honduras mission trip, which is awesome, and I highly recommend contributing in a benevolent way that way. But it's harder for me to look at my next door neighbor and see Jesus right there, because if I see Jesus needs serving right there, it's probably going to inconvenience my daily life. But I think that we are supposed to live that way. Referencing back to the Good Samaritan, his plan was not to spend a bunch of money and use a bunch of time on someone on the side of the road, right? Yes, ma'am.
Since we have lots of time for discussion.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is really resonating with me, because I think everybody can relate to those ought to moments.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to sing praise that there are women in this room, and not call each one out, but you know, my daughter was saved. I adopted Trisha, and she became a part of our family, and ultimately became one of Christ's children because of a person who had those ought to moments and brought her to us, right? So big things can happen from little things.
Yes. Those ought to moments are from God, I firmly believe. And when you ignore them, I think you're missing a big opportunity. Imagine if that one person had ignored that. We wouldn't have her, you know? And she's now part of a very wonderful Christian family, and will hopefully have a long Christian lineage too. All because of one person following an ought to.
We changed her family tree.
Yes.
Changed her story.
Yes.
I mean, actually, God changed her
Right.
story through us.
Yes.
Which is just, I'm super emotional today, so we just
Yeah.
gotta
Yeah.
It's amazing.
But I love that. Thank you for bringing that up, because that was a small choice someone made that has eternal effects. I think that's beautiful.
Amber, I was just gonna say, after Jeffrey's lesson,
Mhm.
when he first put that picture up there and he said, from all the people yesterday, and he
Mhm.
said, what do you see? my first thing that thought, and because I used to struggle with this, when I go to the store, or somebody get in my way, or I was just like, get out of the way, I'm in a hurry, I've got all this going on. And I had to change my mindset of thinking, that's a soul.
Mm-hmm.
It's a soul in front of me that needs God, a soul that needs saved. So when he put that picture up there, that's the first thing that came to my mind
Yeah.
this morning. Those are all souls
Yeah.
that we touched that, through the service. And
Yeah.
those are souls that need saved. So that whole changing the mindset is a tremendous thing in the way, because I used to get, it's like, oh,
I know.
why is she taking
Yeah.
so long to do this?
Yes.
And,
I saw a lady wearing my sweater.
Oh. Oh, wow.
I donated last time.
Yeah.
That's my sweater.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Very distinct.
That's cool. That's neat. You should put like from the wardrobe of Carol Kinning on a tag underneath, so people can be like, "You're wearing a Carol too." I'm wearing Carol today. Let's see. You can learn a lot of things. Yes, ma'am.
That reminds me of the saying, we are the hands and the feet of Christ.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I think I want to put that in calligraphy and stick it on my
Oh yeah.
refrigerator.
I've been writing stuff in Expo marker on my windows.
Yeah.
That's really helpful, or on my mirror. You can learn a lot of things by asking. Just ask questions, get to know people. I learned that a neighbor needed scrubs only because I asked her about her new job, or if she even was working. And when we get in that apartment, we're like hustling to get into our units, right? And I'm like, hi, I live upstairs from you. I'm gonna accost you in the hallway. Tell me about you. I have to like throw myself out there. And then she really settles comfortably in that conversation, right? Well, she did that time. Asking questions, get to know them. And guess where I work? She needs scrubs. Guess where I work? A hospital. I was able to provide an abundance of scrubs because God put me at the hospital. God made me her neighbor, and I decided to follow an ought to and open my mouth and talk to her. I asked about school for a neighbor, and I found out they were homeschooled. Got some teenagers across the hall from me. They're homeschooled. Makes me think, how can I help? One of my neighbors couldn't get their car to start, and he was conveniently working at the same location as me, David Desjardins. So, but I wouldn't, and I know he goes here, but I wouldn't know about his needs unless I was looking. He's not going to come upstairs. I mean, now he would because we've established that, but he wasn't going to come upstairs and knock and be like, I need a ride to work. I work night shift. And I'm like, dude, me too. I'm working Tuesday, Wednesday, let's go. And so now, in snowpocalypses, him and I ride together when his car doesn't work.
David's need a car?
He's okay right now, but he wasn't. But he's okay right now. I'll keep you apprised. Figure out what I will finish up in just 1 second. Figure out what your spiritual gifts are. A wise Mike Katkiss once said in a Wednesday night lesson, there are no ungifted Christians. You have spiritual gifts. Take your gifts, take their needs, and start thinking. And I want you to look right next door, because this is our neighboring class. Bring those two lists, your needs, their gifts, or their needs, your gifts. Bring those two lists to your friends, to the people in this room, and let us help you brainstorm. I find it to be helpful. Next week, we're going to talk, the next week, we're going to talk about reciprocal service, because your neighbors have a way that they need to serve you too. And we're going to talk about the spiritual importance of that. But for now, we're going to dismiss, and y'all are going to have a great day. Thanks for being here.